It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had just said, I do. The music was drifting through the vineyard courtyard. Champagne glasses glittered beneath white lights, and my new husband was laughing with his uncle beneath an arch covered in lilacs. Then my mother walked toward me carrying 2 glasses of red wine. Celeste Ridgway was smiling, but I knew that smile. It was the one she wore when she had already decided what someone else should do and was waiting for them to obey. For the bride, she said. I accepted the glass automatically. Then I smelled it. Beneath the dark fruit and oak was something faintly medicinal. Sweet, bitter, and sharp enough to remind me of a hospital corridor. My mother watched my face carefully. Before I could decide what to do, my younger sister, Marla, appeared beside me. She was laughing, flushed from dancing, and completely unaware of the tension between us. "Let me steal a sip," she said. "You'll be pulled away before you finish it." I let her take the glass. She drank. Less than half an hour later, Marla collapsed on the dance floor. At the hospital, doctors found a powerful sedative in her system. The drug had interacted with the alcohol and caused her blood pressure to fall dangerously low. But the glass had not been intended for Marla. It had been handed to me. That night, while my sister lay beneath fluorescent hospital lights, I finally understood something I had spent my entire life refusing to see. My mother had never simply wanted to protect me. She wanted to control me. And when she realized she could no longer control my marriage, my friendships, or my future, she decided to make the world believe I was unstable enough to lose them. What she did not know was that, for the first time in my life, I had stopped asking whether I was imagining things. I started collecting proof. And once I found the truth, I made sure she could never hide behind that smile again. My name is Iris Whitmore. Before I married Callum, I was Iris Ridgway. I was 34 years old, a community arts educator, and known among my friends as the calm one. I planned workshops, taught teenagers how to turn grief into paintings, and mediated arguments between donors who could not agree on wall colors. People often mistook calmness for confidence. In my case, calmness had been trained into me. My mother believed strong emotions were embarrassing, crying was manipulation, anger was vulgar, disagreement was disrespect. From the time I was old enough to speak, I learned that the safest response to Celeste was a soft voice, a pleasant expression, and a willingness to question myself before questioning her. Celeste was 58 at the time of my wedding. She had been 24 when I was born and 27 when Marla came along 3 years later. My biological father left when I was young. By the time I was 11, Celeste had married Reeve Ridgway, a quiet accountant, 3 years older than she was. Reeve had lived with us for more than 2 decades. He was not cruel, but he had made a lifelong habit of choosing silence whenever speaking might inconvenience him. He called it keeping the peace. I had recently begun to understand that silence usually protects the person causing harm, not the person suffering from it. That was why I did not immediately accuse my mother after Marla collapsed. I stood in the wedding courtyard, as the music stopped, and guests rushed toward my sister. Callum reached her first. He dropped to his knees, checked her breathing, and told someone to call an ambulance. Callum was 36, 2 years older than me. We had met 4 years earlier, at a community documentary screening where he interviewed local artists about public funding. He was patient, observant, and almost impossible to impress with performance. That was one of the reasons my mother disliked him. Marla's skin had turned pale. Her eyes fluttered without focusing. Celeste arrived moments later. "She probably forgot to eat," she announced. "She gets dramatic when her blood sugar drops." The certainty in her voice disturbed me more than panic would have. Marla had eaten. I had watched her finish most of her dinner. Callum looked up at me. "What did she drink?" My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Celeste answered for me. "Wine? Obviously. We're at a wedding." I stared at the glass lying on its side near Marla's hand. Red liquid had spilled across the stone floor. One of the staff members moved toward it with a towel. "Don't touch that," I said. My voice came out sharper than I expected. The young server froze. Callum looked at me again. I pointed at the glass. Please put something around it. Don't clean it yet. Celeste's expression did not change, but something in her eyes narrowed. Darling, she said, your sister needs medical attention, not one of your investigations. I did not answer. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Marla was taken to Mission Hospital, and Callum drove me there while Reeve followed with Celeste. On the way, Callum kept one hand on the wheel, and the other close enough for me to reach. What did you smell? He asked. I looked at him. You saw me? I saw your face. I don't know. Something medicinal. Did your mother see Marla take the glass? Yes. And she said nothing? No. He went quiet. At the hospital, we waited for nearly 2 hours. Celeste paced just enough to appear concerned. She spoke to nurses in her polished, controlled voice and corrected Reeve whenever he gave them information she considered unnecessary. She's always been sensitive to alcohol, Celeste said. That was not true. Marla was 31 and could drink 2 glasses of wine without difficulty. When the physician finally entered the waiting room, his expression was serious but not alarmed. Your sister is stable, he said. Her blood pressure dropped significantly, but she responded to treatment. We found evidence of a benzodiazepine-class sedative in her preliminary toxicology screen. Reeve frowned. A sedative? The doctor nodded. Something similar to lorazepam. Combined with alcohol, it can cause severe drowsiness, confusion, loss of coordination, low blood pressure, and in some cases respiratory complications. Celeste placed a hand over her chest. How could that happen? The doctor looked toward us. Does Marla take any prescribed anti-anxiety medication? No, I said. My mother answered at the same time. She may have taken something without telling us. Marla did not take sedatives. She avoided them because our biological father had struggled with dependency before leaving the family. The doctor explained that the hospital would conduct a fuller toxicology analysis. Because Marla's condition might involve involuntary drugging, hospital security had already contacted law enforcement. Celeste's face remained composed. Only her right hand betrayed her. Her thumb moved repeatedly over the edge of her pearl bracelet. I had seen that gesture throughout my childhood. She did it whenever events began moving outside her control. A deputy arrived shortly before midnight. He asked basic questions about Marla's food, medication, and alcohol consumption. Then he asked who had given her the drink. The waiting room became very quiet. I looked at my mother. She took it from me, I said. The deputy turned toward me. Who gave it to you? My mother. Celeste let out a soft, wounded laugh. I brought my daughter a toast at her wedding. That is hardly suspicious. The deputy did not react. Did you prepare the drink yourself? No. I picked it up from the reception bar. I remembered the glass in each of her hands. I remembered the strange smell. I remembered the way she had watched me. Which bar? I asked. She looked at me, as though I had embarrassed her. There was only one. That was not true. The vineyard had a main reception bar and a smaller service station near the kitchen. The deputy took our statements and instructed the venue to preserve surveillance footage and any remaining physical evidence. One of the staff members had already placed the fallen glass aside after hearing my request. That small decision would later matter more than I understood. Celeste stayed at the hospital until Marla regained consciousness. She hugged her, kissed her forehead, and told everyone she had never been so frightened. Marla looked past her at me. Her eyes were exhausted, but there was something else in them. Recognition. When Celeste stepped away to speak with a nurse, Marla whispered, "You smelled it too, didn't you?" My chest tightened. What? The wine. I saw your face before I took it. I sat beside her. I didn't know what it was, but you knew something was wrong. I could not lie. Yes. Marla closed her eyes. Mom kept asking me questions before the wedding. What kind of questions? Whether you had been sleeping, whether you seemed overwhelmed, whether Callum pressured you into getting married. She opened her eyes again. She said she was worried you were becoming unstable. The word struck me harder than anything else that night. Unstable. It was the word Celeste had used whenever I resisted her. When I cried after she destroyed a painting I made at 16, I was unstable. When I refused to stop seeing Dorian in college, I was unstable. When I moved into my own apartment at 27, I was unstable. She had spent years constructing the same story. Iris could not trust her own judgment. Iris was too emotional. Iris needed her mother. I looked through the glass wall at Celeste, standing beneath fluorescent lights, speaking calmly to a nurse, as though she were the most responsible person in the building. For the first time, I wondered whether the purpose of the drug had been to kill me. Then another possibility entered my mind. What if she had only wanted me to collapse? What if she wanted me confused, disoriented, unable to complete the reception or leave for my honeymoon? What if she planned to stand over me afterward and tell everyone she had warned them that I was not well? That possibility felt even more like my mother. Celeste did not enjoy chaos. She enjoyed controlling the explanation for it. Callum sat beside me as dawn approached. "You think she did it," he said quietly. I did not ask who he meant. "I think she knew something was in that glass." He stared across the waiting room. "Then we let the police handle it." I nodded, but I did not feel relieved. When Callum reached into his coat pocket for his phone, a cream-colored envelope slipped halfway out before he pushed it back inside. I noticed Celeste's handwriting on the corner. He saw me looking. "What is that?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "Something I should have shown you before today." I was exhausted, frightened, and still wearing the dress in which I had gotten married. I did not have the strength to press him, but I remembered the envelope. Marla was discharged the following afternoon with instructions to rest and avoid alcohol until the complete toxicology report was available. The police had opened an investigation, though the responding deputy was careful not to promise what they would find. The venue provided the names of everyone who had worked the wedding. The fallen glass and the napkin used to surround the spill were placed in sealed evidence bags. The vineyard's manager agreed to preserve all footage from the reception, kitchen entrances, bar areas, and parking lot. Celeste objected immediately. "This is becoming absurd," she told Reeve in the hospital lobby. "Marla could have taken something accidentally." Marla, pale and unsteady, looked at her. I did not. Celeste softened her expression. "You may not remember." That sentence changed something in Marla. She did not argue. She simply moved closer to me. Callum took us home. Celeste and Reeve drove separately. The moment we entered my apartment, I removed my wedding dress and folded it across a chair. I could not bear to hang it up. It smelled faintly of flowers, rain, and spilled wine. Our honeymoon flight was scheduled for the next morning. We canceled it. Callum said nothing about the lost money or the months of planning. He made soup, answered messages from concerned guests, and stayed close without crowding me. He was kind in all the ways my mother had once claimed he was not. Celeste had opposed our relationship from the beginning. She never attacked Callum directly. That was not her style. Instead, she asked gentle questions. Was I sure documentary work was financially stable? Did I worry that he admired my independence because he lacked ambition of his own? Was it wise to marry someone who traveled so often? Each question was presented as concern. Each concern contained a small accusation. Callum understood her immediately. "She doesn't ask questions because she wants answers," he told me once. "She asks them because she wants to place a thought in your head." I had defended her. "She worries." "No," he said, "she edits." At the time, I thought he was being harsh. Now, sitting at the kitchen table the morning after the hospital, I opened a notebook and wrote one word at the top of the first page. Document. I listed everything I remembered. The smell of the wine, Celeste carrying both glasses, her false statement that she had collected them from the main bar, Marla's comments about being questioned before the wedding, Celeste's repeated claim that I was becoming unstable, the cream-colored envelope in Callum's pocket. Then I searched my phone. 2 weeks before the wedding, Tamsin had sent me an apologetic message, saying a family emergency might prevent her from attending. She eventually confirmed she would not be there. Tamsin was my oldest friend. We had met during our first year at university and remained close through jobs, breakups, moves, and every other transformation of adulthood. Her absence had hurt, but I had not questioned it. I called her. She answered on the second ring. "Iris." I have been waiting for you to call. Her voice sounded strained. Why didn't you come? There was a long silence. Your mother called me. My fingers tightened around the phone. When? About 2 weeks before the wedding. She said you were overwhelmed and not sleeping. She said you had been having episodes. What kind of episodes? She did not explain. She said Callum was isolating you, and that too many people around you might make things worse. She asked me to give you space. I closed my eyes. Why did you believe her? I did not fully believe her, but she made it sound as though you had asked her to protect your privacy. She said calling you directly might embarrass you. That was exactly how Celeste operated. She rarely invented an entire lie. She built one around something real. I had been overwhelmed. I had not been sleeping well. Wedding planning had exhausted me. She had taken ordinary stress and converted it into evidence of instability. Tamsin, I said. Marla was drugged. I know. Callum called me. The glass was given to me. Her breathing changed. Iris, I need you to write down everything my mother said, exact phrases if you remember them. I will. And save your call records. I already did. That surprised me. Why? Because after I heard what happened, I realized the conversation felt rehearsed. She kept repeating that you could not be trusted to make decisions under pressure. The phrase turned my stomach. Could not be trusted. My mother had not simply prepared a drugged drink. She had prepared an explanation. That afternoon, Detective Lena Morales contacted me. She was 42 and had taken over the case from the responding deputy. She was direct, patient, and unimpressed by social polish. The preliminary test from the hospital is consistent with a sedative, she said. We are waiting for confirmation. The glass has been submitted for testing. The venue has provided footage, but there are several hours from multiple cameras. We will need time. I asked whether Celeste was considered a suspect. She is a person whose actions are relevant to the investigation. It was a careful answer. Detective Morales asked whether my mother had access to prescription sedatives. I do not know. That was true. Then she asked whether Celeste had ever physically harmed me. I hesitated. No. Threatened you? Not directly. Controlled your finances? Not since I was younger. Interfered with relationships? Yes. How? I began with Dorian. I had met him when I was 19. He was 21, studying environmental science, with a restless energy that made him both magnetic and difficult. He was not perfect. Once, after a professor humiliated another student during a presentation, Dorian lost his temper and threw a chair across an empty section of the classroom. He did not hit anyone, but the university placed him on probation. Celeste discovered it. A week later, she showed me a photograph of Dorian standing outside a bar with another woman. The angle made them appear intimate. My mother said she had received the photograph anonymously. She told me his disciplinary record proved he was dangerous. She said the woman was probably one of many. I ended the relationship without giving him a chance to explain. Detective Morales listened. Do you still have the photograph? Maybe. My mother kept copies of everything. Would Mr. Heath be willing to speak with us? I do not know. After the call ended, I searched for him online. Dorian taught science at a public high school outside Charlottesville. His faculty photograph showed the same thoughtful eyes, though his hair had begun to gray at the temples. I wrote him an email. I told him I was investigating something involving my mother and needed to understand what had happened between us. He replied less than an hour later. I wondered when you would finally ask. The sentence disturbed me, not because it sounded angry, because it sounded like he had been waiting for years. That evening, Callum stood on the balcony, speaking quietly into his phone. When I stepped outside, he ended the call. Who was that? My producer. What did he want? To check on us. He avoided my eyes. I looked at his coat hanging near the door. The cream-colored envelope was still inside the pocket. Callum, what did my mother give you? His face changed. Not guilt. Fear. Iris, I should have told you before the wedding. Then tell me now. He opened his mouth. His phone rang again. The screen showed the name of his firm's managing director. He answered, listened for less than a minute, and went pale. What happened? I asked when he hung up. The Austin project has been suspended. Why? Someone sent them a warning that I am connected to an ongoing investigation involving fraud, domestic instability, and possible substance abuse. I stared at him. That is not true. I know. Who sent it? Anonymous account. But we both knew. Celeste was no longer waiting to see whether her first plan had worked. She was already building the next version of the story. I met Dorian 3 days later, at a coffee shop halfway between Asheville and Charlottesville. Callum offered to come with me, but I declined. Not because I wanted privacy from him, because I needed to revisit my past without anyone else shaping what it meant. Dorian stood when I entered. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. He looked older, steadier, and more tired than the young man I remembered, yet the familiarity of him unsettled me. Some people do not remain in your life, but your body still remembers how to recognize them. Hello, Iris. Thank you for meeting me. We sat near the back. I placed my phone on the table and told him Detective Morales might contact him. He nodded as though he expected that. What did my mother do? I asked. Dorian studied me. How much do you know? She showed me a picture of you with another woman. She told me you were cheating. She used your disciplinary incident to convince me you were dangerous. The disciplinary incident was real. I know. I was ashamed of it. I had anger problems. I went to counseling after the university placed me on probation. He paused. But the photograph was not what she told you. Who was the woman? My friend Grace. She was married. To another woman. We had just left a study session and she was laughing because I had spilled coffee down my shirt. I felt heat rise beneath my skin. Did my mother take the picture? She hired someone. The answer came without hesitation. How do you know? After we broke up, I noticed the same man following me twice. I confronted him. He denied everything, but one of my classmates later said an older woman had been asking questions about me under the name Mrs. Campbell. Campbell was my grandmother's maiden name. Dorian leaned forward. Your mother called me before you ended things. My breath caught. What did she say? That you were emotionally fragile. That you had become obsessed with me. She said if I cared about you, I would step away without making you feel rejected. She told me you refused to speak to me. She asked me not to. I looked down at the table. For years, I had believed Dorian abandoned me because he was guilty. In reality, my mother had told each of us that silence would protect the other. She did not need to create a complete lie, he said. She used something real. My temper. Your anxiety. Then she arranged the pieces until we saw the picture she wanted. She edited us. Yes. The word struck me. Callum had used the same one. Dorian reached into his bag and removed a folder. I kept these. Inside were printed copies of the cropped photograph Celeste had shown me and the full sequence from which it had been taken. In the wider images, Grace's wedding ring was visible. Another student stood only a few feet away. There was nothing intimate about the moment. There was also a copy of an email Celeste had sent Dorian from an account I did not recognize. Iris has become fixated on the idea that you can save her. The kindest thing you can do is disappear before her attachment becomes dangerous. I read it twice. The phrase becomes dangerous sounded almost identical to the anonymous warning sent to Callum's company. Celeste recycled language because it worked. Before leaving, Dorian asked, Does Marla know you contacted me? No. He looked surprised. Why? Because she knew about the photograph. How? She asked me questions after the breakup. Questions that were too specific for anyone outside the relationship. I remembered Marla sitting on the edge of my bed when I was 19. Did Dorian ever raise his voice at you? Did he read your diary? Did he pressure you to leave school? I had assumed she was worried. Now I realized those questions had not come from her. On the drive home, I called Marla. I met Dorian. Silence. Then she said, I thought you might. What did Mom tell you about him? That he was dangerous. Did you believe her? At the time, her answer was careful. Marla, how did you know what was in my diary? The line went quiet. I have to pick Theo up from school. Theo was 7, and Marla had built most of her adult life around being a mother. Do not do this. Iris, you knew things I never told you. I want to know how. I cannot talk about this on the phone. Then come over tonight. She arrived after 7. Callum was in his office, speaking with an attorney his company had retained to address the anonymous allegations. I asked him to give us privacy. Marla sat at the kitchen table, twisting a napkin between her fingers. She looked smaller than she had before the wedding. The hospital had left faint bruising along her arm where the intravenous line had been inserted. I was 14, she said. I said nothing. You were 17 then. You were dating a boy named Matthew. I remembered him. He had been my first serious boyfriend, if anything at 17 could be called serious. Mom said he was turning you against the family. He was not. I know that now. What did you do? Marla looked down. She made me read your diary. The room seemed to tilt. She said you were hiding things because Matthew was manipulating you. She told me I could help protect you. I heard my own voice come out flat. What did you give her? Pages about him. About wanting to leave Asheville after school. About how trapped you felt at home. My diary had disappeared that summer. Celeste told me I must have misplaced it. Marla continued. Mom dictated an anonymous letter. She made me send it to Matthew's parents. It said you were unstable and that you had threatened to hurt yourself if he left. I never said that. I know. His parents made him stop seeing me. Yes. I pushed away from the table. For years, I had remembered Matthew as a boy who disappeared without courage. Now I understood that he had been 17 too, and my mother had convinced his parents I was dangerous. Why did you never tell me? Because Mom made me feel as though I had saved you. Marla began crying. She said I was the strong daughter, the responsible one. Every time I felt guilty, she reminded me that you were too emotional to understand what was good for you. The old pattern became visible all at once. Celeste had not only controlled me, she had assigned roles to everyone around me. I was the unstable daughter. Marla was the protector. Reeve was the peacekeeper. Anyone who challenged the system became dangerous, manipulative, or disloyal. Did you help her with Dorian too? I asked. Marla shook her head quickly. Not directly, but I repeated questions she gave me. I told her when you planned to meet him. I thought she was trying to keep you safe. I looked at her. Before the wedding, what did she ask you? Marla wiped her face. Whether you were sleeping, whether you cried often, whether you had ever talked about canceling the wedding. Why? She said Callum might be pressuring you. She wanted me to be ready if you had a public breakdown. The words sent a cold shock through me. Ready to do what? Help her take you home. She said she had spoken to a professional and found a private wellness center where you could rest for a few days. I stared at her. She planned to have me committed? I do not know. She said it would be voluntary. Nothing with Mom is voluntary. Marla nodded. Then she reached into her bag and removed a folded page. I found this after I came home from the hospital. She gave it to me the morning of the wedding. It was a typed list. Signs Iris may be in crisis. Confusion. Sudden crying. Disorientation. Slurred speech. Difficulty standing. Paranoia toward family. At the bottom, Celeste had written, "Do not argue. Keep her calm. I will handle the rest." My hands went numb. Those were not random symptoms. They were the symptoms of the drug placed in the wine. Celeste had not only prepared the sedative, she had prepared witnesses to interpret its effects. The glass had not been intended to kill me. It had been intended to transform me into the version of Iris she had described for years. Unstable, confused, unable to make decisions. And once I collapsed, she would take control of the story, the marriage, and perhaps even my freedom. Marla whispered, "I am so sorry." I wanted to forgive her immediately, because she was my sister, and because she had nearly died. But forgiveness, offered too quickly, can become another form of silence. "You can help me now," I said. "How?" "Tell Detective Morales everything." Fear crossed her face. "Mom will destroy me." "She already tried." Marla looked at the bruises on her arm. Then she nodded. "All right." When she left, Callum returned to the kitchen. He saw the typed page on the table. "What is that?" I handed it to him. He read it slowly. His jaw tightened. "She planned all of this." "Yes." I pointed toward his coat. Now you tell me what is in the envelope. This time, I did not allow interruption. Callum walked to the coat, removed the cream envelope, and placed it on the table. Inside was a cashier's check for $20,000. It was made payable to him. The memo line read, "Consulting transition." There was also a handwritten note. "This gives you the freedom to make the responsible choice. End the engagement quietly. Iris will recover faster if she believes it was your decision." I stared at the check. "When did she give you this?" "6 weeks before the wedding." "And you kept it?" I wanted proof. "Then why did you not tell me?" Callum sat across from me. "Because she said if I showed it to you, she would tell everyone I demanded money from her. She said she had already prepared emails and a witness." "Did you believe her?" "Yes." I hated that answer, because I understood it. "What happened when you refused?" "She said she would prove I was using you. She told me your career, friendships, and reputation depended on how quietly I walked away." "Did you record any of it?" "A little." He took out his phone. Celeste's voice filled the kitchen. "You are not equipped for the kind of life Iris requires." Callum answered, "I am not taking your money." "Then you should understand what refusal means. When this relationship collapses, I will make sure people know you ignored every warning." "You are threatening me." "I am protecting my daughter." The recording ended. For several seconds, none of us spoke. Then I said, "Tomorrow, we give everything to Detective Morales." Callum nodded. "No more waiting. No more secrets." That night, I did not sleep. I sat at the table between the symptom list and the check, looking at 2 different ways my mother had tried to erase my choices. One through fear, one through money. And both had failed. The full toxicology report arrived the next morning. Marla had lorazepam in her system at a concentration inconsistent with accidental exposure. The amount was not necessarily fatal, but when combined with wine, it was sufficient to cause severe disorientation, loss of coordination, and collapse. Detective Morales called us to the station. Marla gave a formal statement about Celeste's questions before the wedding, the list of symptoms, and her own history of helping our mother monitor me. She brought the original page in a plastic folder. Detective Morales handled it carefully. "Did your mother give this directly to you?" "Yes." "Did anyone else see her do it?" "No." "Did she explain why she expected these exact symptoms?" "She said Iris had been acting strange." The detective looked toward me. "Had you?" "No." "Any history of fainting, substance misuse, or psychiatric hospitalization?" "No." Marla added quietly. "Mom has told people Iris is unstable since we were teenagers." Detective Morales asked us to provide names. We gave her Tamsin, Dorian, Matthew's family if they could be located, and several relatives who had repeated similar claims over the years. Then she told us something new. The residue from the wedding glass had tested positive for lorazepam. The finding connected the drug directly to the drink Marla consumed. The venue footage was still being reviewed, but one camera near the service corridor showed Celeste entering the kitchen area shortly before approaching me with the 2 glasses. Another camera showed her leaving the main bar empty-handed. Her claim that she had picked up both drinks there was false. It was not enough by itself to prove she had added the drug, but the case was no longer based on instinct. There was physical evidence. There was a false statement. There was a written symptom list. There was a financial attempt to remove Callum. And there was a pattern. Detective Morales warned us not to confront Celeste. "We are seeking additional records and interviews," she said. "Do not post anything publicly. Do not attempt to search her home or obtain evidence illegally." "What should we do?" I asked. "Preserve every message. Record dates and times. If she contacts you, do not provoke her. If you are part of a conversation, you may preserve it, but speak with your attorney before distributing anything." Callum had connected us with a victims' rights attorney named Naomi Bell. Naomi was 45, precise, and almost aggressively practical. "Your mother's strongest defense will be that the family turned against her and manufactured a story," Naomi said. "Do not help her make that argument." Celeste called that evening. I put the phone on speaker and started an audio recording after confirming with Naomi that I could legally preserve a conversation in which I was participating. Her voice was gentle. How is Marla? You can call her. She is not answering. She needs space. A pause. And you? I am waiting for the police to finish their investigation. Celeste Sahil. Iris, you are allowing strangers to turn a family accident into a criminal spectacle. The wine contained lorazepam. Then someone at the venue made a terrible mistake. You told police you got the glasses from the main bar. The camera shows you did not. Silence. Not long. Just enough. I may have remembered incorrectly, she said. You gave Marla a list describing the exact symptoms caused by the drug. I gave her a list of signs that you were becoming overwhelmed. Why did you expect me to slur my speech? You had not been sleeping. Why did you expect me to become disoriented? Because you were under stress. Why did you arrange a wellness center before the wedding? Her tone hardened. I arranged help because your husband had isolated you from people who knew you best. Callum, standing beside me, closed his eyes. You tried to make Tamsin stay away. She agitates you. You told Dorian I was unstable. He was dangerous. You told Matthew's family I threatened to hurt myself. You were 17. You said many dramatic things. I never threatened that. Your memory has always been selective. There it was. The sentence she had used my entire life. Your memory cannot be trusted. I looked at Callum. He nodded for me to continue. Did you put lorazepam in the wine? Celeste laughed softly. Listen to yourself. This is exactly what I feared. Answer the question. I have spent my life protecting you from your own impulsiveness. If you are determined to humiliate this family, I cannot stop you. You are not answering. I will speak through an attorney from now on. She ended the call. The recording did not contain a confession, but it contained the architecture of her defense. I was unstable. My memory was unreliable. Callum was isolating me. Anyone who supported me was dangerous. 2 days later, Detective Morales called again. A warrant had been requested for Celeste's pharmacy records and electronic communications. The investigation had moved beyond an informal inquiry. Celeste responded by hiring an attorney and refusing further interviews. Reeve came to see me alone. He looked 10 years older. I did not know about the wine, he said. Did you know about the wellness center? He lowered his eyes. She told me you might need a place to rest. You believed her? I believed she was worried. Reeve, you always believe she is worried. He flinched. I had never spoken to him so directly. She said Callum was controlling you, he continued. She said after the reception she planned to take you somewhere quiet for a few days. Did she mention medication? No. Did she mention what would happen if I refused? He did not answer. Reeve, she said you would not be in a condition to refuse. The room became still. He reached into his jacket and removed a printed email. It was from Celeste, sent 4 days before the wedding. If Iris becomes distressed, do not let Callum interfere. Marla and I will manage her. I have already contacted the retreat. We may need to act quickly before she says something she later regrets. At the bottom was a reservation confirmation for a private mental wellness facility. The arrival date was the morning after my wedding. The reservation had been made in my name. What did you think this was? I asked. Reeve's voice broke. I thought she was overreacting. I thought no one would actually take you there. You thought silence would prevent it from becoming real. He nodded. I wanted to shout at him. Instead, I asked, why are you giving this to me now? Because Marla almost died. He began crying. Not loudly. Reeve never did anything loudly. I kept telling myself Celeste's behavior was harsh because she loved you. But love does not prepare a bed for someone before making them sick. It was the first time I had heard him name the truth. Celeste had not needed willing accomplices. She only needed people willing not to ask enough questions. That evening, Marla came to my apartment again. I remembered something, she said. She told me that during the rehearsal dinner, Celeste had asked whether Callum still planned to leave for Austin after the honeymoon. I said I thought so, Marla explained. Mom smiled and said, plans change when people understand what is at stake. Callum looked down at the check lying inside an evidence envelope. He had already turned over the original recording, the phone metadata, and the cashier's check to Detective Morales. For the first time, I could see the plan from beginning to end. Celeste had tried to buy Callum away. When he refused, she prepared to discredit him. When the wedding still happened, she prepared to discredit me. Marla had not simply been another person standing nearby. For years, she had been trained to serve as my mother's eyes. That realization hurt more than the check. Money could be refused. A childhood could not be returned. The next piece of evidence came from Mr. Elwood, the 72-year-old neighbor who had lived beside Celeste for more than 30 years. Detective Morales had interviewed him after reviewing exterior footage from the neighborhood. He had seen Celeste in her backyard late on the wedding night. She wore rubber gloves and carried a small dark bottle. According to his written statement, she emptied its contents into a storm drain, rinsed the container, and placed it inside a grocery bag. Mr. Elwood had worked in industrial chemistry. He noticed the way she kept her face turned away from the liquid and handled the bottle carefully. He had written down the time that night because the behavior disturbed him. The police recovered no bottle from the drain. Too much time had passed. But nearby security footage from another home showed Celeste entering her backyard at approximately the same time Mr. Elwood described. Again, the evidence did not stand alone. Together, however, the pieces began forming a structure. Access, preparation, a false explanation, a plan to portray me as unstable, a financial attempt to remove Callum, disposal behavior after the wedding. Detective Morales informed us that Celeste had filled a lawful prescription for lorazepam several weeks before the ceremony. That did not prove she used it, but it established access. More important, the timing of the prescription matched the period in which she began contacting the wellness facility and discouraging Tamsin from attending the wedding. Celeste's attorney issued a statement claiming our family was exploiting a medical emergency to conduct a public campaign against her. We had not spoken publicly. Yet several members of the Garden Society received anonymous emails claiming I had suffered a breakdown at my wedding and falsely accused my mother while intoxicated. The messages were sent before the police investigation became widely known. That meant Celeste had begun distributing her version almost immediately. Tamsin received a different message. This is not your story. Walk away before Iris damages your career too. Marla's son's school received an anonymous letter alleging that Marla had untreated mental health episodes and might be unsafe around children. Callum's clients received warnings about fraud and domestic instability. My gallery received a hostile email from an address almost identical to mine, withdrawing from an exhibition and insulting the curator. The attacks were precise. Celeste knew which fear to use against each of us. Against Tamsin, professional risk. Against Marla, motherhood. Against Callum, financial integrity. Against me, instability. Naomi advised everyone to preserve the messages and avoid responding. The police began seeking subscriber records and other digital evidence. For several days, Celeste remained invisible. Then she appeared at my workplace. I was teaching a class when the receptionist called me downstairs. My mother stood in the lobby, wearing a pale blue coat, the same shade as the dress she wore to my wedding. She carried no purse. Her hands were empty. "I need 5 minutes," she said. "You need to speak through your attorney. I am your mother. That is not an exemption." Her face tightened. A security officer remained near the reception desk. Celeste lowered her voice. "Do you understand what you are doing to this family?" "Yes. You are destroying your sister's reputation. You sent the letter to her son's school. You cannot prove that." The speed of her answer revealed more than denial would have. "You tried to remove Callum from my life. He is weak. You offered him money. I gave him an opportunity. To abandon me. To prevent a mistake. And when he refused, you drugged me." Her eyes became cold. "You keep saying that as though repetition makes it true. The evidence makes it true." "What evidence? A glass handled by dozens of people? A confused sister? A husband who wants money? A former boyfriend with a disciplinary record?" She had already prepared the attack against every witness. Then she leaned closer. "Iris, when this is over, everyone will remember that I warned them about you." There was no tenderness in her voice now. Only certainty. "You believe you can still control the ending," I said. "I know you. You always become tired before the rest of us. That sentence frightened me, because it was true of the old Iris. The old Iris exhausted herself, trying to prove she was reasonable. The old Iris apologized to end conflict. The old Iris confused surrender with peace. "I am not tired," I said. "You will be." Security escorted her out. That evening, I discovered a package outside my apartment door. Inside was my old diary, the one Marla had stolen when she was 14. Several pages had been marked with red ink. On the first page, Celeste had written, "This is who you become without guidance." It was not simply intimidation. It was a message. She had preserved my private thoughts for 17 years. She believed my own words could still be used to define me. I turned the pages slowly. Many entries described loneliness, anger, and fantasies of leaving home. Normal feelings for a teenager living under control. But one page had been removed. The torn edge was fresh. I called Marla. "Do you remember what was on the missing page?" She was quiet. "Yes." "What?" "The night Mom slapped you." My breath stopped. Celeste had struck me once when I was 17. Only once. She apologized the next morning and convinced me I had provoked her by becoming hysterical. I had written everything down. The argument. The slap. Her apology. The way she made me promise never to tell Reeve, because it would break the family. That page was now gone. Celeste had returned the diary to frighten me, but she had also removed the one entry that could expose direct physical abuse. I called Detective Morales. She collected the diary as evidence. The missing page could not be recovered, but the torn binding and Celeste's handwritten message mattered. So did one other detail. The package had been delivered by a private courier. The courier's camera recorded Celeste personally, handing it over. Her need to control the narrative was stronger than her caution. A week later, Dorian contacted me again. He had searched old university records and recovered an archived message from Celeste. It had been sent shortly before our breakup. "If Iris continues resisting, I may need Marla to confirm the extent of her instability. She has always been the more reliable daughter." Attached to the message was a scanned copy of a handwritten statement supposedly written by Marla at 14. "My sister is obsessed with boys who make her hate her family. She talks about running away and says no one understands her. I am afraid she may hurt herself." The handwriting looked like Marla's. The words did not. I showed it to her. She began shaking. "I wrote this." "Did Mom dictate it?" "Yes." "Did you know where she sent it?" "No." Marla covered her face. "She told me it was for a counselor." It had not been for a counselor. Celeste had used it as the foundation for years of claims that I was emotionally unstable. The document was not merely another piece of evidence against my mother. It was proof that Marla had unknowingly helped create the false identity Celeste later used to justify drugging me. Marla cried for nearly an hour. "I helped her build the cage. You were 14. I still helped. You were a child trying to earn love. That does not erase what happened to you." "No," I said, "but it explains how she made it happen." We sat together until sunrise. That night, Marla stopped asking me to forgive her. Instead, she began asking what accountability looked like. That was the first moment I believed our relationship might survive. In the original version of my life, I would have invited Celeste to dinner and confronted her in front of the family. I imagined the polished table, the evidence displayed across a television screen, and my mother finally forced to admit what she had done. Naomi stopped me. "A confrontation may feel satisfying," she said, "but it could damage the investigation, create new safety risks, and give her an opportunity to claim family coercion." Instead, we followed the process. That was harder. Revenge is immediate. Justice is procedural. It requires waiting while other people examine pain you already understand. Nearly 2 months after the wedding, police executed search warrants for Celeste's phone, computer, pharmacy records, and certain areas of her home. They found deleted drafts of several anonymous messages. They recovered a document titled Iris Intervention Plan. It included the names of guests Celeste believed would support the claim that I had been emotionally unstable before the wedding. Tamsin's name was listed under people to exclude. Callum's name appeared beneath a heading. Primary obstacle. Marla was listed as cooperative family witness. Reeve was manageable if reassured. I was reduced to a subject heading. Iris, probable resistance. The plan described what Celeste expected to happen after I drank the wine. Within 15 minutes, visible anxiety, confusion. Within 30 minutes, impaired speech and balance. Response. Remove from reception. Limit Callum's access. Transport to private facility. Public explanation. Exhaustion and emotional collapse. Family explanation. Unresolved mental health crisis worsened by marriage pressure. The document never explicitly stated that Celeste intended to add lorazepam to my drink. It did not need to. The expected timing mirrored the drug's effects too closely. Police also found emails between Celeste and the wellness facility. She had claimed I suffered from untreated anxiety, paranoia, and possible substance misuse. The facility told her that an adult patient could not be admitted involuntarily without legal criteria and clinical evaluation. Celeste responded, "Once she is impaired, she will agree." That sentence ended any remaining belief that she had acted out of concern. She planned to manufacture incapacity and then interpret my confused compliance as consent. There was another discovery. A draft email addressed to several guests had been scheduled for the morning after the wedding. Iris experienced a serious emotional episode last night. Our family is grateful for privacy while she receives treatment. We ask that no one contact her directly, as outside stimulation may worsen her condition. Had I drunk the glass, everyone I loved would have received that message before I woke up. My mother would have isolated me while claiming isolation was treatment. Detective Morales called the plan highly significant. Naomi called it a roadmap. I called it the truth. Celeste was arrested several days later on felony charges arising from the drugging, along with allegations connected to the plan to transport me while impaired and the campaign of electronic harassment. The arrest did not feel triumphant. I watched the news report from my apartment with the sound muted. Celeste walked from her house wearing a beige coat. Her hands were positioned behind her back, though the camera angle did not show the handcuffs. She did not lower her head. Even then, she moved as if she were entering a room that belonged to her. Reeve stayed elsewhere that night. He asked to sleep on our couch. Callum agreed before I could answer. At 3 a.m, I found Reeve sitting at the kitchen table. "I should have stopped her years ago," he said. "Yes." He looked surprised by my honesty. "I kept telling myself she knew you better than I did. She made sure no one believed they knew me without her interpretation." He nodded. "When you were 17, I heard an argument upstairs. The next morning, she said you had thrown something at her. I did not. I know that now. You could have asked me. I was afraid of the answer." His confession did not absolve him. But it was true. Reeve had not failed because he knew nothing. He failed because knowing would have required action. Marla began therapy shortly after Celeste's arrest. She told me she had spent her whole life believing love meant usefulness. "If I helped Mom," she praised me, she said. "If I questioned her, she treated me like I did not exist." I understood. Celeste controlled me through criticism. She controlled Marla through approval. The methods were different. The purpose was the same. Callum's work remained damaged for several months. 2 clients returned after his attorney provided documentation of the impersonation campaign. 1 major project never came back. He stopped pretending the loss did not hurt. "I built that project for nearly a year," he told me. "You are allowed to grieve it." I keep thinking if I had told you about the check sooner, she still would have acted. But maybe we would have been more prepared. Maybe. We were learning that honesty did not always produce comforting answers. Sometimes it simply kept us from lying to each other. By the following spring, Callum's firm had rebuilt most of its client list. He did not recover the Austin project, but he was asked to lead a new documentary division focused on public interest work. It was not the same opportunity. It was a different one. That mattered. The gallery apologized and reinstated my exhibition. Tamsin changed her phone number. Marla's son's school closed its inquiry after receiving information from law enforcement. We were surviving. But Celeste was not finished. From custody, Through her attorney and several associates, she began presenting herself as the victim of a vindictive daughter. She claimed I had always resented her. She suggested Callum manipulated me for financial gain. She implied Marla's toxicology results were unreliable. One local columnist published a vague piece about family disputes being criminalized. People who had never met me began discussing whether adult children were too quick to label strict parents abusive. For several days, I felt the old exhaustion returning. I wanted to explain everything. Naomi advised against it while the case remained active. Truth is not strengthened by being repeated into every argument, she said. Let the evidence speak in the proper place. So I waited. 4 months after the wedding, a preliminary hearing was scheduled. By then, Celeste's attorney had turned her defense into a familiar story. I was unstable. Marla was suggestible. Callum wanted money. Reeve was weak. Dorian was bitter. Everyone except Celeste was unreliable. Then Naomi told us the prosecution had identified a professional witness, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Hart. The name sounded familiar. Callum looked at me. I know her. How? Before the wedding, your mother asked me for the name of a family counselor. She said she wanted help repairing things between us. My stomach tightened. You gave her Dr. Hart's name? Yes. When? About a month before the wedding. I remembered Celeste telling Marla she had spoken with a professional. At the time, it sounded like another vague claim. Now it had a name. Dr. Hart was 55, a licensed clinical social worker who had operated a private family counseling practice in Asheville for more than 20 years. Callum had recommended her because one of his colleagues described her as careful and ethical. He had believed Celeste wanted help. Instead, she had used the referral to research how to remove me from my own wedding. The preliminary hearing took place nearly 6 months after the wedding. By then, the spring flowers from our ceremony were long gone. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and floor polish. Marla sat beside me, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Callum sat on my other side. Across the room, Celeste wore a dark navy suit. No pearls. No palais bleu. She looked smaller, without the visual language she had spent years using to signal elegance and control. Her attorney argued that the evidence was circumstantial. He suggested a venue employee could have contaminated the glass. He claimed the intervention plan was merely an overprotective mother's attempt to prepare for a daughter with a history of anxiety. He described the cashier's check to Callum as financial assistance misunderstood during a family dispute. He portrayed Marla as emotionally vulnerable and influenced by me. Then, Dr. Evelyn Hart took the stand. At first, confidentiality rules limited what she could disclose, but Celeste's legal claims had placed certain communications directly at issue, and the court allowed carefully defined testimony. Dr. Hart said Celeste had met with her twice before the wedding. Celeste asked how a family could arrange emergency mental health treatment for an adult who refused help. Dr. Hart asked whether I had threatened myself or anyone else. Celeste said no. She asked whether I had experienced hallucinations, mania, psychosis, or severe impairment. Celeste said no. Dr. Hart told her that disagreement with family, wedding stress, and distrust of a parent were not sufficient grounds for involuntary treatment. Celeste then asked, what if she became impaired in public and agreed to go somewhere safe? Dr. Hart told her that consent obtained while someone was intoxicated or medically impaired might not be valid. Celeste replied, she would only need to agree long enough for us to get her away from him. A murmur moved through the courtroom. The judge called for silence. Dr. Hart documented the conversation because the phrasing concerned her. Then the prosecutor asked whether Celeste contacted her after the wedding. Dr. Hart said yes. The morning after Marla collapsed, Celeste left a voicemail. The recording played. The situation did not unfold as expected. Marla became ill, and now Iris is treating it as proof of something that never happened. I need to know how to prevent her from turning this into another crisis. The message was not a confession. It did not say Celeste placed the drug in the glass. But what struck me was what she failed to say. She did not ask whether Marla would recover. She did not express shock that a sedative had been found. She did not ask how to support either daughter. She asked how to prevent me from controlling the story. Dr. Hart testified that the wording alarmed her, especially because Celeste had previously asked about obtaining consent from an impaired adult. The prosecution then presented the intervention plan, the wellness center reservation, the scheduled email, the cashier's check, the altered messages, and the camera footage. For the first time, the evidence was not scattered across conversations and folders. It existed in one place: the courtroom. The defense requested additional time to review the testimony and discuss possible resolution. Outside, reporters waited behind a barrier. Naomi instructed us not to comment. Celeste was escorted through a side exit. As she passed me, she stopped. The deputy told her to continue. She looked directly at me. "I made you strong enough to do this," she said. Even now, she wanted credit. I answered quietly, "No, I became strong when I stopped listening to you." She was moved away. The case did not end that day. It moved through months of motions, evidence review, negotiations, and delays. Nearly 9 months after our wedding, Celeste accepted a plea agreement. She admitted responsibility for contaminating the drink, the electronic harassment campaign, and the plan to transport me while I was impaired. Other allegations were dismissed as part of the agreement. She received a prison sentence, followed by supervised release, mandatory mental health evaluation, and a long-term no-contact order protecting me, Callum, Marla, and Theo. The sentence was less severe than some people expected. More severe than Celeste believed she deserved. At the sentencing hearing, the judge allowed Marla and me to give victim impact statements. Marla spoke first. She described waking in the hospital and realizing she had almost died because she trusted a glass handed to her sister. Then she spoke about being 14. "I believed love meant helping my mother control Iris," she said. "I became useful to her by betraying my sister. The medication nearly killed my body, but her manipulation shaped my life long before that day. When it was my turn, I did not describe every injury. I did not need to. My mother spent years telling people I could not trust my own mind," I said. On my wedding day, she tried to create physical symptoms that would make her story appear true. This case is not about a disagreement between a mother and daughter. It is about manufacturing incapacity in order to seize control of another adult's life. Celeste watched without expression. I continued. "I do not ask the court to make her understand me. I no longer need her understanding. I ask only for the right to live without her interference." That was the last time I spoke to my mother. After the sentencing, Callum and I went home. No celebration. No champagne. We ordered takeout and sat on the floor, because neither of us had the energy to set the table. "I almost lost you," he said. "You did not. I kept secrets because I thought I was protecting you. That is what everyone in this family said." He looked ashamed. I took his hand. "The difference is what we do after we understand the harm." Callum nodded. "No more secrets. No more protection that requires silence." We made that promise, not because marriage guarantees honesty, because love requires choosing it repeatedly. The months after the case were quieter than I expected. For years, I imagined freedom would feel dramatic. I thought there would be a single morning when I woke without fear, opened the curtains, and immediately understood that my life belonged to me. Instead, freedom arrived in ordinary moments. I bought a red coat without wondering whether Celeste would call it attention-seeking. I ignored a call without preparing an explanation. I cried during a film and did not apologize. I disagreed with Callum without believing disagreement meant the relationship was ending. I taught my students that art did not need permission to be honest. Every small choice became evidence that I could trust myself. Celeste's social world collapsed gradually. The Garden Society removed her from its committee. The church group replaced her as a volunteer coordinator. Several organizations issued careful statements about cooperating with the investigation and reviewing leadership standards. Some of her friends defended her. Others disappeared. I did not participate in the public discussion. Naomi helped us prepare a limited statement after sentencing. It described the verified facts, thanked investigators and medical staff, and provided resources for people experiencing coercive control. Callum published a personal essay about the $20,000 offer and the danger of confusing silence with protection. Dorian shared the full set of photographs Celeste had used to destroy our relationship. He did not sensationalize the story. He simply explained how facts can be arranged to create a lie. Marla spoke at a local support group for adults raised in controlling families. Her first talk lasted only 10 minutes. She called me afterward. I thought everyone would hate me for what I did. What happened? They understood. That does not erase responsibility. I know. But it means responsibility does not have to become permanent shame. She was quiet. I am trying to learn the difference. So was I. Reeve filed for divorce. He moved into a small apartment across town and began therapy. Our relationship remained complicated. I did not suddenly see him as innocent because he finally left. He had watched the system operate for years. But he also testified truthfully, gave investigators the email about the wellness center, and stopped protecting Celeste once the cost of silence became undeniable. I allowed him limited space in my life. Boundaries did not have to mean hatred. They meant access was no longer automatic. Tamsin and I repaired our friendship slowly. She apologized for trusting Celeste's warning over her knowledge of me. I admitted that I had defended my mother so often that people learned to approach me cautiously. We were all trying not to upset you, Tamsin said. No, you were trying not to trigger the version of me she described. That too. We created an arts program together called Reclaimed Narratives. It offered workshops for adults learning to tell their own stories after years of emotional control. The program did not focus on revenge. It focused on language. How manipulation changes the meaning of ordinary words. Concern becomes surveillance. Protection becomes confinement. Peace becomes silence. Family becomes obligation. Love becomes obedience. Participants painted, wrote, recorded oral histories, and sometimes simply sat in a room where no one corrected their memory. The work became the most meaningful project of my career. 3 months after Celeste's sentencing, Callum and I took the honeymoon we had canceled. Not the original trip. We chose a quiet coastal town several hours away. No elaborate itinerary. No family announcements. No one knew where we were except Marla and Tamsin. On the second evening, Callum and I sat on a nearly empty beach, while the sky turned gray-blue. I used to think being married meant protecting each other from everything, he said. What do you think now? That it means telling the truth before protection becomes another kind of control. I leaned against him. That is less romantic. It is more useful. I laughed. For the first time since the wedding, the sound did not feel borrowed. Several months later, I stood in our bathroom holding a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines appeared. I stared at them until my eyes blurred. For years, the idea of becoming a mother frightened me. Not because I did not want a child, because I worried control might be inherited like eye color. I feared I would hear Celeste's voice coming from my own mouth. Callum found me sitting on the bathroom floor. He knelt beside me. Are you all right? I handed him the test. His expression moved from confusion to disbelief, then joy. He did not tell me how I should feel. He waited. I am happy, I said. Then I am happy. I am also terrified. Then I will be terrified with you. I laughed and cried at the same time. For once, conflicting emotions did not mean I was unstable. They meant I was human. Pregnancy brought memories I had not expected. Celeste criticizing my body. Celeste deciding which foods were acceptable. Celeste telling me that discomfort was weakness. I began therapy with a counselor who specialized in family trauma. We talked about parenting without control. She told me children do not need perfect parents. They need parents willing to repair. That idea changed everything. Celeste demanded perfection because perfection never apologizes. I wanted my child to see something else. A mother who could say, I was wrong. I should have listened. Your feelings are not an attack on me. You do not owe me access to every thought. Love does not require obedience. Marla came with me to one prenatal appointment. As we sat in the waiting room, she placed a hand over mine. Do you ever think about telling Mom? No. She may find out eventually. That is different from being invited into our lives. Marla nodded. I almost feel sorry for her sometimes. So do I. You do? Yes. Pity is not permission. That sentence seemed to free both of us. We could acknowledge that Celeste had damaged herself without volunteering to be damaged again. The no-contact order meant she could not call, write, or approach us. Through Reeve, we learned she participated in required counseling, but continued describing herself as misunderstood. I stopped asking for updates. Whether she changed was no longer part of my recovery. Almost 2 years after the wedding, on another rainy spring morning, my daughter was born. We named her Hope Evelyn Whitmore. Evelyn had been Callum's grandmother's name. After Dr. Hart's testimony, the name carried a second meaning neither of us had expected. Hope, because the word once sounded sentimental to me. Now it felt practical. Hope was not pretending everything would be fine. Hope was building something different while understanding exactly what had gone wrong. Marla stood beside my hospital bed holding her niece. I will never let anyone make her believe she has to earn love, she whispered. I looked at her. Neither of us gets to make promises for her whole life. Marla smiled sadly. You are right. We can promise to listen. That I can do. Callum took a photograph of us. Not posed. Not arranged. Marla's hair was messy. I looked exhausted. Hope's face was half hidden beneath a blanket. It was the most beautiful family photograph I had ever seen, because no one had been told how to appear. Months later, while walking through a park with Hope asleep against my chest, I saw Reeve approaching from a distance. He stopped several feet away. I did not know you would be here, he said. That is all right. He looked at the baby. May I? I considered the question. Then I allowed him to see her without holding her. He respected the limit. That mattered. Before leaving, he told me Celeste had asked about the baby through her attorney. She wants photographs. No. I told her you would say that. Then why mention it? Because I am still learning when information is useful and when it is another form of pressure. I appreciated the honesty. It is pressure. I am sorry. He walked away. I stood beneath a dogwood tree as pale petals moved across the path. Hope stirred against me. I placed my hand over her back and felt her breathing. For most of my life, I believed safety came from anticipating my mother, watching her face, managing her mood, avoiding the wrong words. Now safety felt different. It felt like knowing I could leave, knowing I could say no, knowing that love worthy of the name would survive honesty. Celeste once told me she created every strong part of me. She was wrong. She created fear. Strength came from everything I built after I stopped obeying it. For years, I thought my mother's shadow followed me because she was powerful. I eventually learned that shadows grow when we are taught to stand still. Celeste controlled my life by convincing me that every instinct I had was unreliable. She turned concern into surveillance, silence into loyalty, and fear into evidence that I needed her. On my wedding day, she tried to make her story visible. She wanted the people around me to see me confused, weak, and incapable of choosing my own future. Instead, her plan exposed the system our family had protected for years. I did not reclaim my life by humiliating her. I reclaimed it by documenting the truth, accepting help, allowing the legal process to work, and refusing to return to silence. The greatest victory was not seeing Celeste sentenced. It was holding my daughter without hearing my mother's voice tell me who I had to become. It was knowing Hope would grow up with boundaries that protected her freedom rather than restricting it. Sometimes courage does not arrive before danger. Sometimes it arrives afterward, when the room has gone quiet and everyone expects you to explain away what happened. That was the moment I found mine. I used to live beneath my mother's shadow. Now I stand where it cannot reach. And my daughter will never be taught to mistake darkness for love.